Hello guys, how's it going? It's Kaeyoh from Storm here, and today I wanted to take a look at the different healers that are currently in the meta and talk about, from a DPS perspective, the different strategies and things that you can do to have a better chance of beating the various healers. So let's take a look at Rhaegar first, and we'll just go down the line and talk about each one of them. Now, mostly this is I'm talking about for Hero League. If you're going into Hero League and you're in the pick ban selection, there's a lot of influence you have over the game depending on what characters you pick compared to what characters that they have. So, for example, if we're talking about Rhaegar, Rhaegar is one of the more balanced healers in the game. Rhaegar is going to be that he's very jack of all trades for a healer, which means there's a little bit less counterplay with the specific healer. Rhaegar is going to work best for keeping up and enabling bruisers. So like Rhaegar pairs really well with bruisers. Just to keep in mind though, Rhaegar, while he brings a lot of utility and burst healing to his team, he doesn't really have that great of AoE team healing to keep his team up if they're constantly taking poke, because he's very much reliant on a 9-second cooldown. Now he can get the level 13 tidal waves here, which you'll see Rhaegars do sometimes when they're going in a situation with a lot of AoE damage. Tidal waves is a good option for that. But overall, yeah, if you have like a Lunara or something, or long range poke like Li Ming, that's really the best way you can kind of do damage to Rhaegar, because he can't just put all his eggs in one basket, which is their bruiser. They're constantly taking damage. He's relying on that 9-second cooldown, and you'll do pretty well against that. Just a quick note about Li Ming. We just mentioned Li Ming, but I think it's worth noting, by the way, that put on all rolls here. Li Ming doesn't really have any healers that can counter her in any way. Li Ming is way too much AoE and single target burst damage and sustained damage that doesn't really matter what you have as a healer. You're still not going to really be able to handle Li Ming's damage. So Li Ming is always going to be a safe pick, no matter what damage their healers have. She doesn't really interact with the synergies that other healers have, the pros and cons, etc. She just does an insane amount of damage, which is tough for any healer to handle. Alright, back to the supports. We talked about Rhaegar. Let's talk about Medic a little bit. So Medic is always going to excel at just keeping people up in a sustained fight, just constantly switching the beam on targets. She doesn't have to wait for a cooldown, so like she's always going to do better in poke sustained fights. The safeguard as well allows her to mitigate a lot of burst. So really your biggest option and the biggest weakness that Morales has is that she can't heal herself. So having a comp that has more flank threats and ways to put pressure on Morales herself and kind of split the team up, that's the best thing you can do. Characters like Vala, Jaina, these kind of characters that can come in from the side, Greymane, put a lot of pressure on the backline of the enemy team, including Morales, and secure kills on Morales. Like that's why Greymane's really great, because you can just rip that R, jump on her, Q her, and usually get the kill. So that's more of a team comp thing as well. You want to try, when you see like a medic picked earlier in the draft, you want to try and start building your comp around counterplay of just being able to get in there and get a kill and finish the job. So that's Medic. Let's talk about Malf a little bit. Malf is a unique healer because he does rely heavily on his ult, Tranquility, to be a healing threat. Now recently, the couple patches that we've had, we've seen a little bit more of a buff to his Q so that he's not as reliant on his Tranquility. Regardless, he is still very ult dependent. That's just the design of this hero. So the characters that are going to do really well against Malf are characters that can kind of break up the momentum of the fight, reset the fight, and be able to back off of the fight. So as soon as you see Tranquility, for example, one of the best counters in the game for Malf is going to be Falstad, because you can immediately just gust away this character, and that 100-second ult is something that they have to wait for it to come up again. Any characters that are cooldown reliant like that, that's what things like Gust are just amazing for. Malf is also fairly susceptible to hard engage. The only problem is that Malf is a healer that has Ice Block at 13, so it's something you need to be aware of and watching out for. Be careful not to get in the habit of like, okay, well we're just gonna build a comp that's just gonna one-shot Malf. We're just gonna put everything into killing Malf at the beginning of the fight, because most of the time with Ice Block it's not gonna happen, and then you're gonna be in an awkward situation where you've all in the fight and the enemy team's just gonna kill you while the Malf is sitting there in Ice Block. Also, Malf can just pop the Tranquility, then Ice Block, so it's not like, oh, well, Malf is Ice Block, so he's not healing anybody. Well, he's still healing because he still has Trank going the whole time. Alright, so moral of the story with Malf is try to pick things like a Falstad. Malf heals extremely well in sustained fights as well, especially with the Innervate as well, the mana regen. So you don't really want to get in poke wars versus Malfurion comp. So just having a character like a Falstad, a Zeratul, these kind of things that can break up the fight, as Zagara, those are your best bets. Alright, so let's talk about Kharazim a little bit. Now, Kharazim, they changed him a little bit as well so that he has a bit more healing and he's able to get cleanse. So with him being able to have, you know, both the healing and cleanse, he's not as much of a one-trick pony anymore. He does still have a decent amount of healing. And you, of course, your team's constantly got to be watching out for the burst from seven-sided. With Kharazim, the weaknesses that he has though is that one, he has to clump it with his team. He's a character that has to be clumped with his team because that's just the nature of his heal. He heals nearby heroes and it's a very small range. So he has to be sitting basically right on top of the people he wants to heal, which makes it a great target for AoE type characters. With characters clumping like that, you're going to get a lot of value out of Li Mings, out of, you know, alts like Ma, just any situation where basically you can get a lot of value out of all the targets being right on top of each other. So look for that with Kharazim. Let's talk about Brightwing a little bit. So Brightwing does have the trait that constantly is AoE healing, which gives her a nice sustain for her team when you're fighting around objectives, but she doesn't have the actual healing value that a lot of other characters do. So in poke battles, you kind of need something to happen with, like a Brightwing needs her team to actually make a play, because if they're just sitting around forever, her value falls off very quickly. She can throw the big shield. You know, that's her primary sustain, is being able to teleport on one of the bruisers or whatever and drop this big shield on them. But as soon as that value wears off, that's about all you're getting out of her. Also, she's extremely low mobility once she's in team fights. She does have the blink ultimate, of course, which is kind of annoying to deal with. That gives her the little extra mobility that she needs because she's so vulnerable in fights. But just keep track of how many times she's blinked and just look for opportunities as soon as those blink charges are down. That's really when you want to try to and switch targets and go on to Brightwing and get the kill. Okay. Then there's Tyrande. Tyrande is an extremely aggressive support who needs to get kills in the fight to be valuable. So whenever you're playing against a comp that has a solo healer Tyrande, you know that you're going to get a lot of value out of your poke because she really doesn't have that many ways to deal with poke. All she has is her one little Q heal. And unless she talents into that, it's a pretty underwhelming heal. So having abilities to keep people alive, like having a Tassadar against a Tyrande, is really good because you can shield the target and keep them from dying. And like I said, if a target's not dying, then Tyrande's value falls off a lot as a healer. So characters that can break up the fight momentum as well are really good here. Your Falstads, your Zagaras, your Zeratuls, but also just poke. Poke does a lot of damage versus Tyrande comps. If you have like a Lunar, for example, just dotting up the whole team, she just does not have a kit to keep all of them up. So anyways, guys, that's just a general little breakdown of what to look for with the different healers. To recap real quick, Morales and Malf are going to be your super sustain healers that are going to deal with poke really well. You need to have a bit of engage for to, you know, take out Morales right away. Rhaegar is more of your jack of all trades support, which there's not really as much of a counter to as far as picking for DPS, but just know that he doesn't have that much sustain healing for team fights. Karazim, you can really capitalize on a lot of AoE damage because he's forced to clump up with his team to heal them. And then Brightwing doesn't really have much sustain other than her giant shield that she's going to be dropping on her team. So you can do a lot with her. Also, Tyrande, remember that her kit only allows her to do that one Q heal every like 10 seconds. So if you have a lot of poke damage, you're going to be doing a lot of damage to the team over time. She can't really handle that. Anyways, guys, hope that video was helpful. Have a good one. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.
Today I'm going to be doing a patch note breakdown. Today we have a really big patch. Probably the biggest patch Heroes have seen in a long time. Might even be bigger than the scaling changes. We'll see how some of these changes are working.